Rewind-A-Dynamite from the post-wrestling site. AEW, lighting up the fuse. Sit back and enjoy the bubbly, as we hear from Jon and Wai Ting. Where we're going, we don't need roads. And if the buck stops here, this thing might blow. Everything you hear are opinions of the show. And if you don't like it, go to the forums and let them know.
Hello and welcome to Rewind-A-Dynamite. I am Jon Pollock and joined as always by Wai Ting. It's Wednesday night, moments removed from AEW Dynamite and their holiday bash. Are you in the holiday spirit after those 2 hours, Wai?
I mean, not really.
You weren't festively inclined to just get swept up in the holiday bash festivities tonight?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think so.
Have you ever been Irish whipped into a Christmas tree?
That I have not. No, have not felt that. But no, it was a wrestling show. I don't know if I don't know what it could have done to get me into the festive mood.
Okay. Well, we will break down this segment by segment. Still to come. We've got news to get to. We'll also be opening it up to your feedback as well. If you want to submit a super chat, if you're in the room, you can submit one. We will give time to your questions at the end of the show because we are not going to have a chance to do so on Friday night nor Monday night because of the schedule. So we actually will not be doing a live show until next week. However, this Friday night, we are not leaving you hanging because as your Friday night ritual, we know that you just won't be able to have a normal Friday night without us. So premiering at 11 p.m. Eastern time this Friday night, it is the post-wrestling Christmas show. As soon as Rampage ends and three individuals are $300,000 richer, you can tune over to the Christmas show. A show that, to quote a great man, it's a big motherfucker.
Yes, it is. Yes. Yeah. We're putting the finishing touches on it. We're going to premiere it right here at youtube.com/postwrestling, 11 p.m. Eastern time, available for everybody. But if you're a Post Wrestling Cafe patron, you will get it ad-free in your feeds directly, whether you're a supporter of ours on Patreon, on the YouTube side of things, or on the Apple Podcast side of things. Those will be uploaded and released at 11 p.m. Eastern time. And then also on the free feed. So for those of you who choose to listen to it with a few ads in between, you can find it on the free feed as well.
All right. So tune in Friday night, 11 p.m. Eastern. If you want to marathon through it, you'll be ending the show probably in time for breakfast. So that's our promise to you. Many, many special guests. It's going to be a crowded ring this year at the Post Wrestling Christmas party. The Jingle Contest winner will be crowned. I'm looking forward to it. I think this is a good one. That's my prediction.
I think it'll be the best.
Ooh, very, very high standard right there. One other thing I want to mention is that after the Christmas show, we are going to be focusing on the best and worst of show that is going to be coming out on Monday, January the 2nd, with myself, Wai Ting, Braden Harrington, and Davey Portman getting together. And we are combining this year best and worst categories. We have a consolidated list. It'll be one big show handing out all of our awards. But as always, we are also going to play the very world famous likely, unlikely game as well. And I thought this year, who am I going to task with coming up with the likely or unlikely list? And you know what, Wai? I found the best person to come up with the likely, unlikely list for 2023.
All of you.
That's it. Memo.fm/postwrestling. All you have to do is submit your name and give us a scenario, just a brief scenario, and then we will go through all of your submissions and give it a likely or unlikely for 2023. Be creative, be as witty as possible, keep it quick because we want to get through all of them, but it's free to submit. Memo.fm/postwrestling. We'll round them all up, and then your scenarios will be read on the best and worst of show coming up January the 2nd.
Excellent.
There you go. So there you have it. And the last thing is that just for the Post Wrestling Cafe, we do have quite a bit coming up. So over the next few weeks, we've got the Christmas show that you will get ad-free if you're a Cafe member. Next week, we're releasing the 5-year anniversary show that we did back in Newark, New Jersey in November. And then we'll be back. We'll have Rewind to SmackDown, the night of John Cena's return, and a review of Wrestle Kingdom 17. Those will all be shows on the Post Wrestling Cafe. So if you're jumping on board, if you are thinking about joining, we have quite a bit coming up over the next 2 weeks of Cafe exclusive shows.
And let's not forget what we just released yesterday. Our latest Rewind-A, number 122, talking about The Undertaker's one more round from his Broken Skull sessions with Steve Austin. This is the second interview he's done with Steve Austin on the WWE Network. This one coming after the announcement of his retirement, after the last ride, and certainly after the Boneyard match. And he'll go through all of that, including some of the moments that, he hasn't really, spoken to such detail with, at least, last time around. So, this is really our excuse to talk about the Undertaker's career at length, including how close this man's always protected his gimmick, and how much of a contrast that is from, how he presents himself today. Details about the Hell in a Cell, both Hell in a Cell matches, his role as locker room leader, Wrestler's Court. We went about 2 hours talking about the Undertaker. So if you're a fan of his, you can check that out right now at postwrestlingcafe.com.
Yeah, I think Wai summarized it. It really just turns into like a deep look at The Undertaker. I really enjoyed this show. We got to speak about, several big moments of his career and kind of go in depth into them of what was legit that was brought up, and just kind of our thoughts about a lot of interesting topics. So I enjoyed this one, as well as the news that week. I know it was only 2 years ago, but there's some really interesting news going on that week in November of 2020. Not a super old review, but still, and I was on the fence about doing one so recently, but this turned out to be a really interesting look back just 2 years ago. And really, this was a retrospective on Mark Calloway. So that's up there. The One Milk, One Sugar level gives you access to all of our bonus audio and the entire Rewind-A archive, including the Broken Skull sessions with Mark Calloway. And you can hear his thoughts on Undertaker wine as well. Let's get into the news. And we're going to start off with a story that TMZ reported just the other day through Mandy Rose's agent, Malky Kawa, who I knew was representing Dana Brooke, did not know he was representing Mandy Rose, rather. Malky Kawa, who, has represented a lot of people in the NFL, but primarily people know his name from MMA with Front Row Management. And anyway, he told TMZ that since Mandy Rose's release last week, that she has made $500,000 from her FanTime site and expects her to hit 1 million by Christmas this weekend. So even if this is Malky Kawa slightly exaggerating, or if this is, is she at 500,000 total now? Is it sounded, the way it was worded was she has added $500,000 since this release. And her page, she was very smart. As soon as the release happened, she upped the price to $40 a month for access to the page. So, if you're looking at 500 grand, the idea that over 12,000 people signed up, I can buy that figure. I would imagine that regardless, she is probably doing very well on this FanTime site. And I guess the question, Wai, is that long term, can you see this being a viable business for her if she does not find her way back to a pro wrestling forum to advertise herself? Or is this enough that this certainly beats doing pro wrestling for a living?
Certainly does, yeah. I don't really know what the career trajectory of people in that line of work, what that looks like. I would assume in a case like this, there's going to be a peak, and it's going to slowly diminish, as she falls out of the news cycle. But nonetheless, the peak seems to be pretty high right now. And is that enough for her to, catapult herself and her earnings into a different business? She already has I believe some sort of a business with Sonya Deville, with donuts and whatnot. And obviously that's probably not, nearly as lucrative as something like this. But when you have a lot of cash, you don't even have to do anything in the public eye, and you can really potentially set yourself up for life. So, I think this is, a very good thing for her. I mean, ultimately, this controversy has resulted in the greatest advertisement for FanTime, I think, ever in professional wrestling. And she's taken full advantage.
Another client of Malkikawa's is Paige Van Zant, which to me would be the template for a ex-wrestler or fighter to follow in. And Paige Van Zant, very similar, she left the UFC. She hasn't even done a bare knuckle fight in over a year. She's disappeared completely from AEW. It doesn't seem like I've heard nothing regarding her pro wrestling aspirations, but I don't know what she's making doing like her own similar site, but it's, anytime she has spoken about it, it's like that is just a gold mine for her. And she acquired Stardom and has held on to Stardom even without having a UFC platform or anywhere. Like she's not on any major national broadcaster anywhere. So that's certainly like the model to follow, is kind of that template that has been laid out.
And you have to imagine there are other people, either in professional wrestling or really kind of all combat sports, or any form of entertainment, that are looking at what's happening with Mandy Rose right now, and what people like Paige Van Zandt have done, and are wondering if it's an option for themselves.
It completely, and there's going to be ones of certainly. I don't feel this is going to be an isolated incident of WWE having to confront when it comes to allowing talent, especially at the NXT level, to do these, and how far they are willing to allow these performers to go in terms of like the content that's out there. Like it's like this line of like, is it just a strictly like, what is our policy going to be? Like, you can do these, but no nudity. Can you do these? Or are you going to be clamping down even further on, like, will this be sort of a regression where it goes back on just none of these third party kind of opportunities?
Yeah, specifically in regards to like these NXT deals. And for what I understand, Mandy Rose seemed to exist on sort of this weird gray area where she did have her main roster contract, but while at the same time had enjoyed some of the freedoms granted to NXT roster talent.
Which is a great situation for her. Like, she's not on the road, and she's doing has a tremendous side business on top of this, and is still, making your money at WWE.
It was the fact that she was on NXT that allowed her a FanTime page to begin with. And this is something they're going to crack down on, and if they are, well, how do they justify that? Because I would imagine they would have to, either increase their pay or do something, to justify it, or maybe not. Like, they don't really have to say anything, really. Just say no. They just have to say no. And that's the power that they seem to wield. So, it's an interesting situation, but at least, feels like it's worked out for her.
The next story comes from Sports Business Journal's Jon Ourand, and every year he does his annual predictions for the year. So, I mean, and Jon Ourand is one of the top sports business reporters out there. So I think whenever these predictions come out, these are believed to be very much informed rather than this guy just guessing out there. But specific to WWE, his prediction is that WWE goes all in with NBC Universal. He says the WWE's TV deals expire at the end of 2024, but it will start to negotiate new deals in April, right around when WrestleMania is in LA. By the end of the year, the group will have a deal in place with NBCU that keeps Raw and NXT on USA and moves SmackDown from Fox to one of NBC's channels. The real significance of this deal comes in 2 years when the two negotiate their Peacock deal. The deals for Raw and SmackDown will lay the groundwork for NBCU to buy WWE outright. Bold predictions from Jon Ourand. He would be welcome to submit this at memo.fm/postwrestling, but just make sure you include your name and your company that you work for. Wai, likely or unlikely? Let's start with SmackDown being gobbled up by NBC Universal and placed, whether it be on USA, even the potential that it could end up on NBC.
I think we have to ask, whether or not this deal has been good for Fox. At the price that Fox is paying, at the ratings that they have garnered thus far with Fox or with SmackDown, would you say that it has been a deal that has been worthwhile and one that they'd be willing to, re-up or more likely pay more for?
I feel that it's a deal that I could not imagine Fox going much higher than what they're currently paying for it. When you look at like the number getting thrown around when the deal began was the hope of a 1.0 in 18 to 49. They're never hitting 1.0. I think they hit it maybe twice right at the beginning. They've settled in. It's a good number. They're typically number one on Friday nights. It props them up. The argument is that this is, $205 million average annual value for this contract. It's sizable in the wrestling space, but it's not a crazy figure when you're looking at 52 weeks a year. But it's also, and it's on a night when what would be replacing SmackDown if you're Fox? What would we be investing to cover 2 hours on Friday nights in its place? I don't think like this is a deal whereas Raw to USA, it would be catastrophic if USA lost Raw. Like they are struggling, and Raw significantly lifts them up. Fox, they could lose SmackDown, and I don't think it's going to be a big problem for them. And I also don't see them going crazy to, like, if WWE comes in and they want $350 million for this, I don't know if Fox is going to be necessarily committing to a gigantic increase. And that makes you all the more valuable if an NBC Universal is interested with the long-term goal that even if we overpay for SmackDown, this is all getting our ducks in a row for a massive purchase down the road when we can take all of this and not do this game every 5 years of increasing the rights fees. The big issue that would come with that is if you have a scenario where Vince McMahon wants to be back in this company, I mean, he ultimately has to give the green light to a sale. And that one paragraph last week from the Wall Street Journal, that's going to come up in all of these negotiations. Like, I think that makes Nick Khan's negotiations a little trickier when you're going to have people saying, what's the deal with Vince McMahon? And Nick Khan can state, listen, there's no smoke to that fire, but are you going to believe that when this guy has the most voting power? And if you're NBC Universal and you want to buy this thing, you know that Vince McMahon has to be on board with this. Like that, that does create the first time that we have a public perception of a power struggle in the sense of Vince wants back in and he's not back in. Why is he not back in? Who is withholding him from being back in? And that's, you can give the obvious answers as to why he should not be in. I think it would be catastrophic if he was back in any kind of meaningful role. But if he wants to be back there, this is somebody that, he still does wield power in this company, quite a bit of it.
Oh, no doubt. Yeah. And I mean, maybe, the threat of him being the big obstacle to prevent, what could be a major deal with one of these broadcasters. I mean, that's a real point of leverage that Vince still very much has. So, as for likely or unlikely in the new year, for this to happen, I think it's very likely that SmackDown moves off of Fox and into the NBC portfolio. A purchase outright.
Imagine they put it on NBC on Friday nights and gives Dwayne Johnson the boot with Young Rock.
Well, they'd probably do a lot better than that. But I think a more interesting question is, okay, let's say Fox doesn't have WWE on Fridays. Do they look towards any other professional wrestling?
Well, and that being AEW, it's a huge question. It's hard to imagine of AEW being on Fox, but if you were to break down the economics of it, I mean, it makes a whole lot of sense for them of the idea, we know, we've seen enough examples of when SmackDown goes to cable on FS1 and granted it's one-offs here and there throughout the year, but it's a drastic drop that they get. I don't think this would be a case where you would be able to build that audience up to 2 million viewers if it was on USA every Friday night. So you have to look at the inverse of AEW going from, and we just went over the numbers the other night, from TBS on a Wednesday night with Dynamite in 73 point something million homes to Fox that is in 123 plus million homes, and what kind of audience they would bring on a consistent basis. And they are not holding out for $205 million. If they got half that, is game-changing money for AEW. $100 million would be enormous for them. That's more than a 2x increase.
Certainly, yeah. You can even argue that, I mean, even at a number less than that, it's still very worthwhile for AEW at the point now, 3 years into their business where really they're still trying to build name value, just to expose the product and the roster and everything about it to a mass audience. I mean, that would be a gold mine for them.
Yeah, it becomes a very interesting game as well of if you are WWE and the idea of leaving Fox, does that leave the door open for such a option to occur? Like if you were WWE and you really wanted to be detrimental to AEW, and Warner Brothers Discovery was in a better situation, which they are not. Are you not taking a meeting with David Zaslav or whoever is overseeing these negotiations of WWE having content on Warner Brothers Discovery when all of this is up?
Of course. Why wouldn't you? I mean, you have meetings with everybody. That's just the nature of business, right?
But I don't think they could command any kind of, I do not see WWE getting any kind of offer from Warner Brothers Discovery regardless. But it's like an interesting theory out there of, if you are looking to leave to hurt AEW's power as much as possible, like these are all the different calculus methods you're plotting out if you are going into this.
For sure. But, regardless of like where WWE ends up, I mean, AEW is a thing now. They are a thing with a proven track record of ratings. That and they're very valuable to way more people now than just NBC or just Warner Media and NBC. So I'm still very curious to see like who else they'll be talking to, who else will be in contention when AEW rights are up.
The last thing on this, if you were to look at a situation, and this doesn't have to be Fox, this has to just be, this could even be within Warner, if their next round of negotiations goes in such a way, and this would be very counter to where television is going, where it's always more and more content. But if there was a deal where they get 2 hours of Dynamite somewhere for a sizable amount, but Rampage is not part of this package, is there a reason for AEW to keep that show going to sell down the road? Or do you think that there's a benefit to 2 hours of solid programming every week, even though you have this bloated roster? As a consumer, would that be a benefit to AEW as opposed to this third hour that you are constantly trying to hook people into watching, and certainly would not, you could find it in, like, it could end up somewhere on a cable network somewhere, but that's certainly something that Rampage's fate will be part of this whole negotiation if it ends up on a streamer or if it's not even wanted by someone else.
I think you run into a very similar situation as you have, are seeing now with Ring of Honor. Where if no broadcaster wants it, or if no streaming platform necessarily wants it, at least for a price that Tony Khan wants to sell it for, well, maybe your own streaming platform is the destination. Maybe you make it part of a, repackaged Honor Club that makes that deal a bit more attractive for $9.99. I mean, so much of it, depends on the logistics of their taping as well. But certainly AEW Rampage you built a name for it right now. It might not be a name as strong as Dynamite, but nonetheless, it's a name people recognize. And if it's a part of a streaming package that you're trying to sell, there's value in it. I would at the very least probably get rid of a Dark and replace it with Rampage if it came to that.
Anyway, well, those are that is John Ourand's prediction. So there you have it. A few other notes. Raw on Monday night was up 16% in viewers, 1,705,000 viewers, and a 0.43 in the 18 to 49 demo, finishing 7th among cable originals, behind what was as expected, a large NFL audience spread out over ABC, ESPN, and ESPN2, over 16 million viewers in total watching the Green Bay LA Rams game. And this was their Raw's highest audience since October the 17th and their largest demo figure since November the 7th. Audience fell 13% throughout the show. 18 to 49 only dropped 9%. So this was a very strong bounce back after last week's poor showing with that first hour that tanked. They did much better here, and so this was certainly a stronger number and against much stronger competition with a much more watched NFL game as well. So obviously, people wanted to see if Dexter Lumis would leave with all the money.
That's why I tuned in.
I mean, that was what else was advertised. They had Becky and Bayley announced, and then they had the ladder match.
Man, dude, as soon as Tuesday afternoon hits, I completely forget everything that I watched.
You don't
I'm
rewatch
sorry.
Raw second time on Tuesday
Oh
just
man,
to
I was about to
refresh
do that
yourself?
right after this. Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Man,
you didn't have the chance, I
sorry.
guess, this week. That's
Like if you
fine.
gave me a quiz right now, I wouldn't be able to answer.
Okay, I was gonna come up with a question, but I don't know if I could come up with a good one. So anyway, there you have it. That was the Raw number on Monday. NXT on Tuesday did 705,000 viewers and did a 0.14 in the demo. So the audience was up. It was their highest viewership since October, but the demo fell 20%. This was coming off a very good number last week, but they were down pretty significantly in the main demo, including 27% among women 18 to 49. The real big hit they took was in adults 35 to 49, which is an audience that has certainly been affecting AEW these last couple of months. But for NXT, they dropped 30% this week in 35 to 49, and it was their lowest number in that demo since January. It was actually of the year, I believe it was. So anyway, it was a poor number in 35 to 49. They did get a bump in 50 plus, which was their highest in quite some time. So it was a mixed bag for NXT. 35 to 49, no interest. 50 plus, bring it on. We want to see Grayson Waller's interpretation of the Bret Hart metal plate angle from the Toronto Nitro in 1999 that John Pollock was in attendance for. Can't say this was a great replication of what was an unbelievable angle at that time that crowd lost their minds for in Toronto.
At a time when I don't know if there was much you could say that was great about Brett's run in
Dude,
WCW.
I think it was Brett's best moment in WCW, that angle.
Yeah.
It's not a sad, it's a bit of a sad commentary on his WCW run. I would say that and
the Benoit match.
The Benoit match, the tribute to Owen, that comes to mind as well. So anyway, that was Tuesday night's show, and a very good number in Canada. They did 82,000 viewers, which was their highest since January in Canada on Sportsnet 360 on top of that. Those are your ratings notes. New Japan has their final two shows of the year coming up Thursday and Friday at 4:30 a.m. Eastern Time. Thursday's card will be headlined by Okada, Tanahashi, and Yo, taking on Minoru Suzuki, Lance Archer, and Doki. And then Friday's show is the Suzuki-Gun farewell match with Suzuki, Archer, Desperado, and Taka Michinoku taking on Zack Sabre Jr., Taichi, Yoshinobu Kanemaru, and Doki, which will be... I'm very curious if this is just like they all just do a farewell, and as Suzuki said, we go on our merry way, or if this is going to be some angle, whether it's a takeover by Zack or something. You have Minoru Suzuki, who certainly, he's, someone that I think will have an interesting 2023, whatever he ends up doing. But yeah, we will see. I'm kind of curious how this match plays out on Friday's show, which will be, their last card of the year.
I think there are going to be some Minoru Suzuki tears at the end of this one.
That would certainly be something if the man cried in the middle of the ring.
Yeah, there are going to be a lot of tears. I would say, period, probably in the building that day. They've had a great run.
And the final two notes here, staying with New Japan, is that they have renewed their deal with Access TV for 45 more episodes. This is the time slot that immediately follows Impact on Thursday nights. And starting January 12th, they will be airing 5 weeks worth of matches from Wrestle Kingdom 17 coming up, starting with the Ospreay Omega match. So that will air on Access January 12th at 10 p.m. Eastern Time. And we'll probably take up the entire episode. And then the following week, they're doing Jay White and Kazuchika Okada. So Access TV treating Ospreay Omega as the true main event of Wrestle Kingdom, getting the first run of the matches.
I mean, for the North American audience, it certainly is.
And it's a new year, and that means a UFC pay-per-view price increase on ESPN Plus. They are bumping up, and this is a Disney ESPN move that they seem to do every single year around this time. So the pay-per-view prices, if you were enjoying these $74.99 bargains, a UFC pay-per-view will now set you back $79.99 for each pay-per-view, beginning with UFC 283 next month. They're keeping the ESPN Plus subscription price. It's not going to change that, but yes, you have to pay for the service just to have the opportunity to spend $80 on these pay-per-views, which it's I mean, this is the Disney Plus, ESPN Plus strategy of just constantly increasing these prices. And for UFC, it's like they get their guaranteed money from ESPN Plus each month with these pay-per-views. But man, it is a very expensive hobby to be following UFC at a consistent level. And I always look at these as the ones that it's not the big shows that will be hit, but it's the medium and absolutely the smaller tier pay-per-views that I just think there is a breaking point with fans, but this is at a time when this company is just exploding with popularity and finances that it's, they certainly believe they can get away with a $5 price hike.
It's one of the things that proves the power of a UFC and, by extension, something that WWE wants to try to hinge themselves on. And it's the fact that, like, when there's a big fight, people are going to be willing to pay it. And I think, maybe having constantly the other barometer in boxing being even higher priced than a typical UFC fight, I mean, tells you that there's probably a bigger ceiling for it to continue to increase in subsequent years.
And it is one big benefit, I think, that AEW has sticking to this pay-per-view model is that if you are a sports executive following this trend, and everyone is, if you're a sports executive, like the UFC's rise and what it's done to ESPN Plus, and you're looking for comparable, like what is content people will pay for, AEW is not the volume of UFC, nothing close, but you have an audience that it is showing like it can do good business on pay-per-view several times a year. And unlike WWE, they have not conditioned their fan to just pay a subscription fee and you get all the pay-per-views. It's like an AEW fan, if you were presented with, okay, you've got to sign up for Max or whatever the streaming service is, and then pay for the pay-per-view, I don't think you're going to be met with too much friction there because you're already in the habit of buying their big shows. Their big shows have a price tag of $50 every couple of months. And that becomes very valuable to a streamer to know that we can bring in a product that the audience you're bringing will spend money, even if it's, a fraction of what a big UFC pay-per-view is going to do. So there you have it. We will see. Likely or unlikely, within 5 years, it'll be over $100 for a UFC pay-per-view. I'm going to say likely.
What will be the value of $100 mean in our everyday life in 5 years' time?
It's a great point. It might be just chump change by the time we're at like 2027. We will see.
That's right, maybe. Yeah.
Okay. Let's get into the Holiday Bash from the Freeman Coliseum in San Antonio, Texas. We start off with a recap of MJF's win over Ricky Starks last week and Danielson chasing MJF out of the arena. And we cut to Ricky Starks starting the show. And I thought this was a great way to start the show. The last thing Ricky Starks was on this show was an afterthought after losing the match last week. And he came out here. I know that years ago, people were making the argument about Impact should just abandon the US market and just go to the UK. The market is great. They treat everyone like stars. I think AEW should be a Texas-based promotion after these last couple of weeks. These crowds were awesome. And this audience, my God, whatever your belief of a star that Ricky Starks is, it was magnified with this San Antonio crowd. He felt like the biggest megastar for these first 15 minutes.
I mean, yes, Texas is great, but it's a game of volleyball, where you have to give this crowd something to cheer for. And these past Dynamites have given them more than, one thing to cheer for. And especially in the form of a home state guy, at least, in a Ricky Starks, more than plenty to get behind.
He comes out, the whole place is chanting Ricky, and he explains he should have known better last week that MJF would stoop to that low blow, and says that he lost like a man while MJF won like a coward with no balls. And there will be a next time. And one day I will be the man around here. Jericho comes out with Sammy Guevara and Daniel Garcia and said he's been watching Starks for a long time. He states that Starks is $1 million talent who will be a champion one day, but he's not ready yet. He doesn't want to see him become a flash in the pan. He just needs some help from Chris Jericho and invites him to join the Jericho Appreciation Society. Starks replies that he likes how Jericho stays relevant, how the man used to be built like an air fryer, and now he's shredded and dressed like a single father on his 5th divorce. And this audience, they howled at this. And then turns them down, says, hell no, I'm not joining your little boy band. I'm not going to have a leash around my neck. Your stock dropped after losing to Action Andretti, and the J in JAS should stand for jobbers, you jazz holes. And this crowd started chanting jazz hole.
I have to say, jazz hole was a risk. Okay. And if it was anybody but Ricky Starks saying this in Texas, or if it was Ricky Starks saying it anywhere but Texas, I have to wonder if it would have worked as well. But it worked. This crowd started chanting jazz holes.
This could have been suffering succotash in the wrong hands.
Yeah. I mean, this was a flex for Ricky Starks for sure.
This guy's charisma was just off the charts in this segment. He issues a challenge for January 4th in Seattle against Jericho, but then Jake Hager appears from behind and attacks Starks. The JAS join in when Action Andretti runs down, lays out the JAS, clearing the ring. A near perfect segment, I would say, of all the ends out of last week's show that were handled here, that sets up a match. Starks felt like the biggest star on this show. He just felt like at another level, and you attached him with Andretti here, who got to be standing next to this big star at the end of it. I thought this was a great start to the show. And a very uncharacteristic start to a Dynamite. And this had to have been the least amount of wrestling we had on a first hour of the show. We had the one match, the no DQ, and then the hook match. And that was the whole first hour.
And is anybody complaining about the lack of wrestling on this show?
I was
absolutely not. That was the first thing that stood out to me, John, was the fact that we had, a pretty uncharacteristic talking segment start off this Dynamite. And throughout the show, I was certainly looking for hints of any sort of production changes as a result of Michael Mansuri. His second week in that we know. First week, I think it was a little bit maybe early to expect something. But 2 weeks in, maybe we can expect some format changes. And I wondered if this move, having Ricky Starks start the show off with the speaking segment, was anything to do with him. I do feel like, some people might be bothered by this happening too much because they've seen it done so often on every single WWE Raw that's ever existed. 20-minute talking segment before you get to anything. And it's something that I think Tony Khan has actively tried to, not do, because so much of his style of wrestling seems anti-WWE. But I have to say, like, when done well, it's a better way of introducing an audience into the program. It builds anticipation for the action and just kind of eases us in, into a higher paced show when the action actually begins. And especially in this case where you had Ricky Starks, end the show last week, and him picking that back up here, I thought it was especially important to make him the focal point of the start of this show. It shows that he's more than just a supporting act that was just there to be the first notch on MJF's belt. He is a guy that you want to feel it has been made from the spotlight, from the tremendous near win he had last week over MJF. And I thought he carried that really well here. They positioned him incredibly well. We got the hints of the Chris Jericho feud last week, and that was cemented here. Not only did we get Chris Jericho paired with Ricky Starks, we had Ricky Starks humiliate Chris Jericho on the microphone. And he did it in a way like using jazz holes, which I thought it shouldn't have worked, but because Ricky Starks is so incredibly good, it did. It made him look tremendous. And look at the reaction Action Andretti got when he came out here. The man was the talk. These two were the talks of the show last week, and to pair them up together on the same side, just overall adds so much freshness, I would say, to the AEW Dynamite. And really in 2 weeks time, like, it feels like you, in one episode from Winter's Coming, it really feels like you made two new stars. And this segment, I thought, cemented it.
Yeah, I don't think it's ever a bad thing to break from a format to do something different. And I think audiences will respond to quality. Yes, a crappy 20-minute open is dreadful, but we never seem to get that complaint when the Bloodline opens a show and they do a great segment. This would be another indication of one that I thought worked in a great way. But this will be certainly an interesting one to see if this maintained the same level of like a strong first quarter open for Dynamite. That's ultimately going to be your barometer. It's going to affect but in terms of
it is, Sean. I also feel like, though, I think it would help Dynamite to get away from that type of thinking, the type of booking that's
I'm with you.
Relies on the quarter hours and the minute by minutes. It makes for a very cookie cutter and often poor storytelling type of product. You got to do these types of starts from time to time in order to build to the big segments later on. And you know, like you have trouble. They've had trouble making new stars because it's just been action, not enough character development, not enough story. And I'm hoping that changes.
And it will, if you are not just necessarily reactive to one bad quarter, like it will allow you to expand your patience of having not just your core talent, but getting a wider variety. Like, for instance, like if for some reason, and I don't expect that this first quarter to do poorly, but this was a gigantic positive for the building of Ricky Starks that I do not care what that instant data would tell me. I'm in this for the long haul, that I see this guy as a star, and my ability.
Same with the main event tonight.
Very true. Yes, very much. Like you, at some point, you also have to have that conviction as a booker that I know where this is going, and I believe that I have the right people in these roles that you do not create a mega draw overnight, but you have that patience. But we are in a world where you can certainly get into that habit and just make snap decisions. So that's I like the fact that this first hour was a lot different, and I thought the talking segments were very solid. We go to Death Triangle and the Elite. No DQ match number 5 of the Best of 7 series. Don Callis is on commentary, stating that Nick is all recovered from that ankle injury, and they did have Kenny Omega working on Dark this week with his shoulder all taped up, and they continued it here as well. Did you get to see any of the Dark matchway?
I did not.
It was with Hagane Shino, and they had like a really entertaining match for a Dark match. You could certainly like argue that a match like that you could have put on Rampage last week, but this week they put it on Dark, and that's fine. It was like a different kind of setting for Kenny Omega, and I thought it was cool to do that. They had both Omega and Action Andretti on the show, and I'm sure that spurred some more interest in Dark this week. So it's kind of the idea that these shows are not just limited to a certain level of star. It's like you can see the big stars. I mean, any week where you get Kenny Omega and Jeff Jarrett, I mean, that's a big statement of what you can expect.
When are we getting that match?
Maybe on a future episode of Dark. That will be one way I'm certain we'll.
That's what you say for pay-per-view, I think.
Yeah, there you go. The battle of the Bullet Club. It implodes on Dark.
That's it.
So this match was crazy. So we have, first of all, Brandon Cutler is out there dressed as an elf, and he would get into it with Alex Abrahantes for a spot in the ring, which Nakazawa as well got involved, and they're explaining it's no DQ, so they can. And Penta gets a trash can, but you know what? The common bond between WWE and AEW, it's their love of the tables. And this crowd, it's all they wanted. Bring out our tables. So, of course, they brought the tables out during the picture-in-picture, so we never got to hear the pop at home. Then a Christmas tree was brought down from the stage into the ring by Penta and led to Matt Jackson being Irish whipped into this fake Christmas tree.
Yeah, Excalibur was pointing out the the artificial pine needles.
It's choreographed, though, and it still hurts.
Yeah. Jim Ross would have been maybe fun to listen to, for a spot like this. But I'll tell you, like, I will remember this Christmas tree spot way more than any single object I've ever seen in one of these, like, Miracle on 34th street fights that WWE does once a year. I think this is how you do, a hardcore match with a Christmas, item in it. You bring it out as a surprise, you limit it. You don't just kind of randomly litter the ring with like reefs and just like, plunder. You make every object feel unique and special. And I thought they did that here with this Christmas tree.
If you want to see how a violent hardcore match can be utilized out of Christmas decorations and such, you need to watch National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation. It's great in terms of inspiration for a match like this. So the tables are out. Nick misses Pac and super kicks a chair in the corner, thus re-injuring his ankle. And Pac goes to try and pill him in the ankle when he is stopped by Omega. And Omega does You Can't Escape using a trash can onto Pac. And then Kenny Omega goes underneath and he pulls out WH Park's favorite weapon, the barbed wire broom. And he attacks Phoenix with this barbed wire. It's getting caught in the guy's tights. Look, plenty of fun here. Penta and Pac then get set up on the tables on the floor. Matt comes off the top with an elbow drop. Nick with a swanton, putting both through tables. And then Kenny hits a Tiger Driver 98 to Phoenix onto the barbed wire broom. I'm imagining this would be Jim Ross just screaming at this point after the Christmas tree and the barbed wire broom. Near fall.
I wonder, like, I mean, I guess I vaguely remember the barbed wire broom getting some sort of like, I don't know, criticism, but I mean, it's so attached to the guy right now that I mean, it's just a roll of barbed wire essentially. And it's his version of the barbed wire bat, or sorry, it's sledgehammer, isn't it?
I guess so. Yes. The V trigger is hit to Phoenix, and then the one-winged angel is countered with a Rana. He hooks the legs for this great near fall, kind of playing off the match number 1. And then, continuing the callbacks, the hammer is handed to Phoenix, but now it's legal. So he blasts Omega, but Omega kicks out, and this crowd is losing it. Brutalizer is applied on Kenny Omega, but not just any brutalizer. Assisted with tinsel in the mouth.
Oh, ouch.
Brutal.
Yeah. It's rough. Yeah.
Phoenix then applies an ankle lock onto Nick's injured leg, and then Matt saves his partners, Snapdragon to Phoenix as the others are yanked to the floor, and it climaxes with the Meltzer driver onto a chair, with Matt pinning Phoenix in 13 minutes and 40 seconds, and Death Triangle beating the hell out of these three with the hammer after the match, bloodies up all of them, and you've got the blood of one of them all over Pac's abdomen that just looked, this look of this man, this looked like he was auditioning for the ring.
Looked like he had Wilson on his abs.
That's it. And Excalibur, my one complaint here, the attack is still going on as Excalibur's throwing to the next segment of MJF, and it was like, man, this could breathe for a minute that we have this big post-match attack that is not even done yet, and we're throwing away. Like, how urgent is this attack when we're saying we've got other things to get to? We're going to leave, that we're going to take the camera off this attack.
Dynamite is a show with asthma. It has a lot of trouble breathing, and it hasn't. You know, I will say I think like certain elements of the show have felt improved today. You know, we had a lot more video packages than usual. At least to me, it seems. And for that reason, I felt like storytelling felt a lot better. I felt like names were a lot more memorable by the end of it. But you're still going to get moments like this when you're kind of, you know, presenting a product that's fast moving with wall to wall action. You're going to kind of, cut to the back a little bit earlier sometimes. But the match itself, I thought, was absolutely tremendous. Certainly living up to the standard that these 6, 8, including the ringside people have set. Very creative. This one maybe more so than several of the others we've seen because of all the added stipulations and the weapons. It was fun, incorporating a lot of the Christmassy elements into it, but in a way that still fit in a pretty violent, fashion. And the psychology I thought was really solid here too. Of course you had everything to do with Nick's ankle, but what I loved was the near fall, that counter from the one-winged angel into the rollover to the Rana. And this was something that I think was really smart actually, about, going down 3-1 early on for the Elite. Every fall from this point on for the Elite is going to be sudden death. And so you're creating this sort of like Undertaker streak, element where every convincing near fall, we should say, was going to elicit a big reaction.
Yeah, for all the concern that, it's so telegraphed, they're going 7. Like, sure, but that did not hamper this audience at all. Like, no. It was totally again, it's the Undertaker streak, right? We all for a time we all knew the Undertaker was going to win at WrestleMania, but it's the crafting of the match to suspend our disbelief for that one single near That's
fall.
All you need to do is create spots of doubt, and it's enough that the audience will bite on it. And they did multiple times in this match. I thought they did a terrific job. So it's Falls Count Anywhere next week. Then they're off the 4th with Kenny going to the Tokyo Dome, and then the 11th is the ladder match. So these guys are going to be
necessary, John. If
necessary, you're right. It could all end. What will Kenny do in a city named Broomfield next week? They're not getting the clean sweep. We know that.
I don't know.
They showed a segment after Dynamite went off the air last week with MJF calling Bryan Danielson a gutless coward and a nobody in his world, and tells him to don't stick your shitty hipster nose in my business, and refers to his reign of terror. Your shitty hipster nose.
Yeah, they seem to really want to go after his it's either his veganism or I guess that's hand in hand with the hipsterdom, isn't it? Shopping at Trader Joe's and all that.
They've got their drop down menu of insults for Bryan Danielson. Go read a book, you nerd. How many books did you read this week?
Yeah.
Tell me about seashells.
Go don't drink a beer.
Shivani is with Action Andretti. They're really pushing like the tagline, the upset of the decade, and he got a lot of support from the fans, and he had Starks back tonight, and then he's interrupted by Menard and Parker, who state he's on a hot streak. You could say, you're on fire, and he turns around and is blasted with a fireball by the Wizard.
This one looked good, okay?
Dude, he took his eyebrows off with this one and then rubs his face into the floor, wishing him a Merry Christmas.
This was like a straight up, Hadoken here from Chris Jericho. Like, it looked really good, unlike some of the other fireballs we've seen from him. This guy could promo, as we, if you saw that edition of Dark initially, like
it's not just the QT match, it's the promo later in the show that is just as impressive. Like, he cut a great promo, and I'd be very curious. Like, the word was that, Jericho saw that match. I'm curious if he saw the promo too, if that, added to, like, he has gone out on a leap of faith with this guy. Like, of all the people and all the talent that comes through these Dark matches, like, this was the guy that got picked, and he can talk. Like, that is a big part of the package.
And again, it's the fact that he looks and his name is so indie-rific that I think sets our expectations so incredibly low. Like his neon green and blue tights and just the name Action Andretti. I think it's great for this type of push, but I guess I just wonder, if he's due for any sort of change, but maybe he'll make Action Andretti cool.
Maybe he will inherit the name Action Andrade.
Okay. Why?
If the guy's not
take it over,
where's he gone? Maybe he'll just play on Andrade after a while. No,
maybe he'll team with Action Bronson.
Oh, okay.
The actions, lights, camera, action.
Consequences of your actions.
Sure.
We'll table that one later. Renee brought out Bryan Danielson to the ring. Man, this guy was just going to get attacked here verbally. And the whole focus of this is William Regal. And he has asked what that attack on Regal, where that leaves the BCC. And Danielson says he knows that the other members are not going to forgive Regal. But he explains that I trained to wrestle here in San Antonio. I had my first match 15 minutes up the road at Far West Rodeo. Yes! Yeah! Far West Rodeo. This place lost it, dude. They're like, that's a real place.
I imagine it'd be
what's the psychology of like, oh, he said Loblaws, like Loblaws, like I've been there. I've been to Loblaws. It's right up on Queen.
Bryan Danielson came to Toronto and said that he went shopping at Loblaws, I'd lose my shit. Are you kidding me?
I bought a wrap 10 weeks ago at the Loose Moose. Vegan wrap.
The Loose Moose, what's that?
Probably not a vegan spot for Bryan Danielson. Have you ever been to the Loose Moose? I don't even know if it's still open. On Union? No? Okay. I went there after a WWE press conference where I got to ask Vince McMahon a question, and he just no-sold me and did not answer.
You got a great photo out of it, though.
I did. That got picked up in a magazine. So anyway, Far West Rodeo represented here, and he mentions being trained by Rudy Boy Gonzalez and Shawn Michaels, which leads to quite a big HBK chant. But then Danielson turned it over, but he's like, but the man who turned me into a wrestler, the wrestler he is today, is Regal, and also turned me into the person I am today. He says that Moxley, Claudio, and Yuta don't have the same relationship, and I cried thinking that I would never see William Regal again. He made my life better, and I loved having Regal in AEW. But he taught me that there are consequences for your actions, and I need to teach that lesson to MJF. I've listened to every word you've said, and you hospitalized the one person I love more than anyone else outside of my family. And he calls out MJF, but instead he is met by Ethan Page and Stokely Hathaway. On the Danielson portion of the promo, what did you think? As this is clearly the big match for MJF's next title defense.
I thought he sounded great. You know, I again, you see a Bryan Danielson like this, and you compare it to the mic work he's shown in his first year in AEW, and I think you could definitely say that he's probably found his comfort zone, if not the comfort zone. Another, Toronto classic spot, by the way. If not his comfort zone, he's at least found a story and I think material that he could really kind of sink his teeth into to convey that excellent authenticity to me that he's been known for on the microphone. And he really dug into his relationship and his love of William Regal. It felt very real here. I'm really glad AEW is not afraid of mentioning the guy's name, even though he's been announced to go to the competition.
Imagine a Cactus Pete's reference. I'm trying to think who could make it.
That's another place. Is that even exist?
Did you ever go to a Cactus Pete's show back in the day?
No. Was that Ring of Ears?
That was a AWF, the Apocalypse Wrestling Federation.
Okay.
I made many a trek to when I was like 15, 16 years old. It took me like over an hour to get there by bus. And it was like, oh, this is the place. It's just like, this is just a small bar. And they're going to wrestle in this. And they're going to not be able to do any flying. Because the ceiling was literally as tall as this ceiling right here.
Sounds like an indie wrestling show to me.
But I got to see Gail Kim there. I got to see Tracy Brooks there. I got to see Joey Legend there. I interviewed Joey Legend there, actually. I'm trying to think of like names that came through there that were of significant note. But there was
so Vince McMahon and Joey Legend.
You know who was there once, and I didn't even realize it was like Jim Barnett, like the famous
really?
The NWA WWF.
Like
Jim Barnett was there.
He
was there watching the show. Yeah, and I didn't know this until after, and someone posted a photo, and like he was there. He was like a guest, just watching it in Cactus Pete's. I was like, man.
Maybe the next territory he was about to take over.
He's going to invest in the burgeoning Danforth Birchmount scene. So Ethan and Stokely Hathaway are out, and Ethan notes that he made it to the final two of both the title eliminator and the Dynamite Battle Royal. But this vegetable man thinks he can jump the line ahead of him. Danielson comes back and says that he is distracted by the glare off of Stokely Hathaway's head. And then, on live television, cover your ears, could you grow some hair? And please listen to the people and shut up. And Stokely comes back, you raggedy bitch. You raggedy bitch.
Raggedy bitch got a pretty good reaction.
That got a great reaction.
But
grow some hair did not.
Yeah, thank goodness. Thank goodness this guy was Bryan Danielson, okay, one of the most revered professional wrestlers on the planet, and thank goodness this San Antonio crowd was as receptive to the baby faces as
give him a break. He wrestled at Far West Rodeo.
Yeah. Grow some hair is about as great of an insult as, go not drink some beer. Would you have been insulted, John, as a man with a shaved head? If I yelled, "Hey, go shave some, go grow your hair."
I would I'd be so offended if you remarked on the glare from my head.
I think it just kind of underscores how much of a nice guy Bryan Danielson probably is. Like, if this is the best insult he could come up with.
Well, you could certainly argue that Chris Rock got into a lot of trouble making the same insult earlier this year.
That is true. Wow.
So Danielson, like, what if Stokely Hathaway cannot grow his hair?
Okay.
So he says, "Did you just call me vegetable man?" And Ethan Page, dude, he's just riling up this crowd. He says, I didn't call you vegetable man because of your diet. I'm calling you that because I will literally turn you into a vegetable. And Danielson challenges him to a match, but Page declines, saying we can do it next week. And that will happen in Broomfield next week.
Yeah, I didn't expect all the vegetable talk on this, but I mean, I thought it was a nice way for Ethan Page to turn it around. I mean, something relatively innocent into something very nasty, you know.
Yeah, he went from veggie to edgy very quickly.
That he did. Yes, he did. But I thought Page said it really good. Bryan said it really good, and I'm sure the match will be great.
Yeah, at first, I thought, man, is this going to be the Seattle match? And it makes you wonder, like, obviously, Danielson's going to be all over that show. I do not believe that you're going to, go to the MJF route, but it'll be interesting. Like, obviously, he should be in something very, very big in 2 weeks, and they're going to have to set that up next week. Are we so
sure we won't go the MJF route in a week's time?
You can't discount anything. That just seems to me that it's
we
just
said the same thing
started.
About Punk and MJF.
Yeah, it's certainly, like, you can't be stunned if they are opted to go that way with the idea of like bringing it back at the pay-per-view. But yeah, they're gonna have to set that up next week if they're doing. I would say if they were gonna go that route, I would argue you probably should have done it this week.
Perhaps, yeah.
Then they announce, and I'm not kidding, this Friday on Rampage is the $300,000 Three Kings Christmas Casino Trios Battle Royale. I thought this was a joke. Shivani first stated this earlier in the night, calling it the $3,000 Three Kings Casino, and Excalibur had to correct him that no, the winners aren't going to all take home $1,000 from this Battle Royal.
I mean, listen, that's a pretty good payday for most wrestlers on this planet. But
can you imagine? Like Moxley could just take an indie shot that night, and but no. Yeah, these are our trios that will be happening. So we've got the BCC, the Dark Order, the Best Friends and Cassidy. Then we have who else? We have Preston Vance, Rouge and Dralistico, Top Flight and AR Fox, Kip Sabian, Butcher and Blade. The Chaos Project of Luther, Serpentico, and Angelico, and then Ari Daivari, Josh Woods, and Tony Nese. I guess our remaining Trustbusters are Woods and Nese in the Trustbusters?
No. Wait. No, they're their own thing, aren't they? And then Ari Daivari's thing is the Trustbusters, but Woods and Nese are with Sterling.
There was Sterling as the varsity athletes.
Athletes, yes. I don't know if the Trustbusters are a thing anymore after 10.
Well, tonight they got busted, yeah.
Trust has been busted, yeah.
I don't think they're winning.
Probably not.
But unless they lost all their money and Ari's got to regain it. Maybe this $300,000. Yeah. I mean, this does give the gimmick for some team to win and have money.
I quite love this name, and I hope. I mean, listen, like this entire graphic is like
text
an Excalibur segment already on its own, naming every single person on this graphic and trying to name this title of this $300,000 Three Kings Christmas Casino Trios Battle Royal.
Do you know how much better these segments would be if Excalibur didn't have a script and he just had to go off the graphics that come up, and then he sees this one?
One day they should just trip him up and like show something like this.
The hardest job in AEW belongs to Excalibur.
I like this though. This is something unique for Rampage. I'm kind of curious what is a trios battle royal? What? So if you're eliminated, your whole team is eliminated. Is that it?
I mean, their battle royals, as I recall, they do. It's like all. Like the tag teams have always had to be eliminated to like in totality. So I don't know how this one will go. I would imagine
last man standing like wins for the trio.
That's what I think it'll be. Yeah. Okay. A lot of eliminations that would mean.
Okay. It's something unique, for Rampage, and you've got Jon Moxley on that show again. So interesting.
Next up, we had a Moxley promo about the Battle Royal, and he's sick of the tired, somber tones regarding Hangman's injury, asking, what did you expect was going to happen in this match? Do you think I was throwing this lariat to comb your hair? And says that,
great line,
I settled it when I knocked you out. It's not my fault you have a glass jaw. Don't become a play wrestler. And then mentions his opponent tonight, Darius Martin, and just totally mocks all of his injuries, including a car accident, and asks, is that my fault too? And he's going to have to teach him a hard lesson tonight. This was an asshole, but it was a great asshole promo from Jon Moxley.
Yeah, I love this promo from Mox. I mean, he used the man's very legitimate one man's, let's talk about the first one. A man's very legitimate freak accident injury as almost a source of pride here. Not necessarily like, in an overtly heelish way, like I'm glad I injured you, but more as a way of saying like, well, what did
it's you like I knocked you out in a fight. Like this is the game.
Yeah.
I'm not going to feel bad about this.
It's totally logical in character, but when you hear it, it's almost kind of shocking. Like, oh, Mox like went there. He used that against him. I mean, I think it's perfect for the Jon Moxley type of character who is very much a babyface, but can exist in a shades of gray, sort of space, because he's just the guy who wants to kick ass no matter like who you are.
And then we come back from break. Hello, friends. Samoa Joe here. And I was like, this is already awesome. He's in this. He's decked out in his jacket and nice shirt in front of a Christmas tree, wishing us all a happy holiday. And he hopes Wardlow has a great holiday with his friends and family, because it's not going to be a happy new year after next week, when he's going to get all he asked for and more. And then all the holiday cheer ends next week. This guy is quickly becoming one of my favorite people in wrestling. This character is great.
Seeing Samoa Joe pop up on my TV screen in a full-on suit, checkered suit, plaid suit, we should say, saying hello, friends, is everything this. I need this once a week. I would love for Joe to just simply like cut into Dynamite once a week, delivering a State of the Union address behind a podium, as the king of television should be doing every single week. He should be giving these like broadcasts every time. I don't know if this is the start of a new gimmick for him, but I loved it here.
That should be part of the TNT championship. I mean, he's on TBS now, but nonetheless, like, you get X amount of television time every week. I mean, that's what that could be a shoot competition for the locker room. Like, you get TV time with this belt.
Exactly.
Guaranteed segment every week on television.
You get 2 minutes of airtime on TNT to do whatever you want with it. Okay. If you just want to sit there eating, Cheetos, you could do that. If you want to call your mom on TV, great.
Swim laps, play Bop It,
swim laps, like without,
like in a pool.
Yeah, so you have to be broadcasting from a pool.
Yeah.
Got it.
You can have someone Bop It. Did you ever play Bop It?
I never played Bop It. Samoa Joe playing Bop It would be, I'd watch that.
Hook played Bop It with Exodus Prime, who is back. Exodus Prime making his way, a frequent contributor now in AEW programming. Just destroyed here. Takedown, shots to the body, T-bone, lariat, crossfaces, and red rum in a minute 3. Hook wins, but then we cut to the back where Big Bill is with Lee Moriarty and Stokely Hathaway destroying Jungle Boy. That ends with poor Jungle Boy being chokeslammed into a dumpster.
Yeah.
And for all we know, he's still there.
Well, needs a shower afterwards. Yeah, I'm quite excited for this Jungle Boy Hook team. It's like Danhausen and Hook in that they have contrasting personalities, but unlike Danhausen and Hook, there's probably a lot more credibility attached to these two in ring. It's less mid-card comedy, and we'll give a chance for Jungle Boy to continue to speak, and for Hook to just play like this kind of badass, strong, silent character.
And then this was a cool transition. Hook's on his way to the back. Moxley's music plays, and we cut to his entrance through the crowd. And we just kind of bleed into the next segment, which is the Moxley-Darius Martin match. And we've got Claudio and Dante out in the respective corners. And this was a match of Moxley pretty much beating the hell out of this guy. He's shoving him at ringside, bullying him, getting into Dante's face. And then he's distracted, turns around, and all of a sudden, Darius nails him with a dive to the floor. And then Darius gets his ankle worked on, hammer and anvil elbows. He's doing them right in front of Dante. Then they exchange forearms, and Moxley starts tearing at the knee brace of Darius and rolls through on a crossbody, stomps down on the guy's head, and then he's delivering elbows. And I'm not saying we're getting to the what territory or the 2 count that originated out of Montreal, but that Ocho on these 8 counts is they are here, and I think they're here to stay.
It's at the point now where like I'm not even noticing them, and soon I'm going to be at the point now where I'm going to be actively blocking them out. I mean, but they're fun as hell for people live, so I can't blame them at all.
And then Death Rider wins in 8:49. Sometimes these matches, it's like Omega and Hagane on Dark. Like guy gave him everything. This was not one of those matches. He pretty much destroyed this guy. Like got some offense in, but this was not. This was more so for Moxley to really decimate.
And that's perfully fine.
This is not the time for Moxley to be doing 50-50. Like he's building up for a big match with Hangman, and he's playing this much more aggressive version of himself that should not be escaping by the skin of his teeth against Darius Martin. There's a time to do that stuff, but if Darius Martin is not primed for something, don't blow that on just for the sake of doing it.
Yeah. I thought like, I don't know, just going 50-50 for the sake of like having a great match, I think would have like defeated the story and the character that you develop with Jon Moxley, and even for Darius Martin. I mean, if you're going to follow through with Darius, but they're not going to follow through, he's not the focus here. But I wouldn't say it was a complete blowout. I thought Darius, was given, I think, a good amount. But what this was I think a showcase of Jon Moxley's like very aggressive style. His very intense, very aggressive style. Again, he's the type of babyface that can also fall into a heel role against an underdog like Darius, because he's just a guy who wants to beat the shit out of people, whether you're a heel or whether you're a babyface. And he made this into a fight for Darius, which I feel like, high flyers that are usually very graceful kind of have difficulty achieving, the feeling of a real fight. I thought Mox pulled the fight out of Darius here, and I thought it made for a great match from both of them. Good showcase for Darius, trying to fight this monster in Jon Moxley. So, even for a little showcase on Dynamite, I thought it was very entertaining.
The Book of Hobbs continued, and he explained that his first memory was his uncle overdosing when Hobbs was 3 years old. And as a child, he was beaten, he was robbed, he's been stabbed, he's been shot. Who would do this to a child, he asks. The answer, monsters. But in doing so, they create a monster themselves. And now it's time to spill everyone else's blood. Merry Christmas.
Oh, God, goodness, yeah. I love these. I think they've been tremendous. They've been so nicely produced. They look so great. They make Hobbs look like a complete package, and they make him feel important. They make him feel like a fully packaged character. And we finally are starting to understand the motivations behind Hobbs and who he is, why he snarls, why he's always in such a bad mood. I mean, the man had a very rough childhood, and he's going to take it out on every single person out there. It's at the point now where I think these have, made, to me, a pretty good impression that the moment he comes out and attacks a babyface, he's going to get a good reaction. Like, these have built up, I think, his stature pretty well. So, but I'm not sick of them at all. So I hope they keep them going.
No, and I think you can continue them for a bit. It's just, to me, all this culminates with those Cow Palace shows, and then the pay-per-view in San Francisco. Like, when they're in the Bay Area, I think, and I could sense it in Newark when we were there. Like, Powerhouse Hobbs, not the most over guy on the show by any means, but he certainly had something going with the audience that night. Like, they were very much behind Hobbs, and I think they recognize that. These spots have been great, and it's added so much depth to him that when he does come back, I think it will be very much as a babyface, and it's going to explode when they're in the Bay Area. And I think, like, this is where whatever this is going for, it should really peak for that week. But we are quite a ways away from that.
As a babyface, that's really interesting. I mean, because everything about the attitude here, screams to me heel. But I mean, could he be
I'm just saying
feared
how
as a
I think he's going to
babyface?
be received. I think you're going to have, this. I certainly think you're going to have that audience behind him, or you're going to have to do something to sway them away, because these are going to be endearing to people, I feel.
We're a pretty long way away from those shows.
Yeah, and I don't think you run these for another 3 months. I think you have to, or 2 months and change. But you could bring him back earlier, but that should be a big week for him. The Guns versus FTR. The Guns are sent to the floor. We go through a break, and the idea here is that FTR are really paying the toll from the double dog collar match, and they're on a 2-match losing streak after the Acclaimed title loss and then the Briscoes on the pay-per-view. So Dax's quad is all taped up. He's going for a sharpshooter on Austin, but it's stopped by Colton. They get the advantage, and they go for a spike pile driver to Dax on the floor, which is thwarted by Cash Wheeler, delivering a elbow suicida to the floor, and then Austin throws this guy into the guardrail at a grand speed and just nailed him into the rail. They're doing the suck it to Dax, and then Austin applies his own sharpshooter to Dax. Cash returns, breaking it up, and then Cash comes off the apron. He crashes into the guardrail again. So Dax tries to lift up one of the Guns for a pile driver, but his quad and back are all messed up, so he can't do it. Austin reverses the O'Connor roll and holds on to Colton for leverage from the floor, pinning Dax in 9 minutes and 10 seconds. So FTR have now lost 3 matches in a row, and the Guns get their win.
I thought this was a pretty strong match. I when you're showing me the list of FTRs, like, would be challengers that they had coming up for the last season or for the last several months. I mean, the Guns were pretty low on that list, but I thought the match actually ended up turning out pretty well, and it's a reminder that, like, considering especially Colton's level of experience, I think he's achieving way more than we should be expecting of him. I thought it was good, and I was even more pleased actually by the booking of it. It was strong and unexpected, protecting FTR here with the injury, of course, to Dax, which I thought they told that story really well throughout, and it sets, like, it's the biggest thing the Guns have ever really had, at least in terms of an in-ring win. So, the question is whether or not this is setting them up so that FTR can beat them later on or not, if depending on the status of FTR.
Well, given that they are going with the story of this losing streak, I think this pretty much is the writing on the wall. Next Wednesday, they're doing the AAA show, defending the titles against Dragon Lee and Dralistico. And the following Wednesday, so it's 2 weeks they won't be on Dynamite. The following week, Goto and Yoshihashi. I think they're dropping all these titles as part of this losing streak, and they're going to have nothing. And then they come back and have to regroup.
Yeah. So their contracts are
Dax believes their
April?
deal is up in April. That's
so interesting. Shouldn't you know when your contract is up?
You would think so, yes.
Okay, so he believes that they would be up in April. Okay, which means, like, they would still be around for some time to tell these stories. But I mean, they've had a whole year with these championships, and it would make sense that they would give them up at the end of the year.
And then we go to, as John Cena dubbed him, Sonjay-Z. And Sanjay Dutt did his own rap, which was highlighted by Jeff Jarrett in this Slap Max shirt, grooving to this awful rap as Satnam Singh and Jay Lethal were back up for Sanjay. Taz called this the most awkward rap he has ever seen. I thought this was pretty hilarious.
Not since DJ Jopo have I heard a rapper so offbeat.
Thank you.
And not since DJ Jopo have I loved a rap video so much. Yeah, it was fun. It was fun. It
was to set up a Rampage match. Like, yeah. I was all for this.
If anything, if my only complaint is that I felt like this teased me. This got us so close to finally getting a Jeff Jarrett verse. And you
can't give that away, though, just unprepared. Okay, that's coming. That's got to come. They're
Tony
not even
Khan
facing
feud.
the Acclaimed on like it's just Bowens and Billy on. You got to wait for the tag title challenge,
Oh,
and then we'll
please.
get the Jarrett diss track.
It would be the only thing honestly worthwhile about this entire feud.
Oof. Well, we have plenty of worthwhile things to discuss in this next segment because Tony Schiavone is in the ring with my favorite personality, Rick Ross. He is back. I was so excited when I saw this graphic the other day that he would be mediating the face-to-face meeting. And Rick Ross just, step aside, Tony. I've got this handled. And he brings out Keith Lee first. Make some noise for the big homie, Keith Lee. And he reminds us all that he's the biggest boss, Rick Ross, and they've come to make some history here in Texas. And they've got some big business to discuss. And then he calls out the young legend, Swerve. And as Swerve is coming out, Rick Ross is really taken aback by the moment. And he looks down and he looks up and he tells Keith Lee, man, you're a big motherfucker. Uncensored on TVS. Way, I wish you were here with me because I was like, this is the best segment of the year, getting in right at the deadline. I was just in my glory. I was swerving in my glory watching this segment.
Keith Lee's reaction was the best. He's like,
yeah. So they did not catch this one. So Swerve is out, and Swerve, I don't know how these guys kept straight faces with this man out here, says, I tried with you, Keith. We should own everything. And Rick Ross, own this shit. Again, gets out, which was nothing compared to the last one. And Swerve says, I can't deal with the accusations. False accusations. And Lee, you can't keep your eye on the ball, can't keep your eye on the titles, your health. Whoa. And you've got to keep your eyes in the back of your head from now on. When all of a sudden, Parker Boudreaux shows up and attacks Keith Lee, and he's wearing the Mogul Affiliates hoodie that Swerve is in. And Lee fights off Parker. Rick Ross is trying to do his commentary that consisted of, whoa, whoa. And then another man appears. And this is where I'm like, I'm nearly about to message John Cena and say, has this guy been on Dark? I don't know who this guy is. And then Excalibur doesn't know who this guy is. So this guy's really off the beaten path. This man is inked from head to toe, and that's not an exaggeration. And he joins in on the attack, and they proceed to beat down Keith Lee, and it leads to Lee being set up on the steps. They pull out a cinder block to place onto Keith Lee's chest, and Swerve comes off the top for the Swerve Stomp. Thankfully, this cinder block broke. Could you imagine if this cinder block didn't go along with its spot? And then the kiss the lips moment to put an exclamation point on this segment. Rick Ross, he may need some attention. Dude, Rick Ross is the best addition of pro wrestling in 2022. I love this man. He doesn't have to be here every week, but man, when he's here, he has got my undivided attention. I don't know how this group is going to go, but dude, Rick Ross is my favorite part of AEW this year. 2 segments that I was just greatly entertained by this man from.
It was a segment, and it's one that I've seen a bit of division on from the audience.
I love this. I love this, and I'm not going to hear otherwise.
Those looking for, I think, what we would classically deem as a successful professional wrestling television segment may not necessarily find it here, at least in the form of Rick Ross as a mediator in a segment like this. And I'm more in that camp. Okay, I understand there's a real novelty to it, but man, Swerve was about to say something, and this man just would not stop cutting him off. You know, there was like a real certain like charm to it being on live TV. It made it fun.
You didn't know what was going to happen next, and I was
Yeah.
greatly entertained by it. I can understand people getting, was it smooth? No, but that was the appeal to me. Like, I really enjoyed this. And at the end of the day, it was a big attack on Keith Lee, and I don't know, like, Parker Boudreaux and the Man in the Ink. I do not know how these two are going to fare in this group. We will see.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I thought the post, like the actual attack with the worked cinder block, I thought was tremendous. It looked great. It was as devastating as I think something like this needed to be. And I also really like the fact that they're building a faction around Swerve. I mean, I really truly think, like, Swerve is going to be a top act in this company in 2023. And I think having two heavies next to him is going to really, like, help his perception as being a top guy. And Parker Boudreaux, on the Trust Busters, like, really seriously, like, I suppose it was fine that, I don't know, for him to kind of get his training wheels within the AEW locker room, but beyond that, this is a much better role for him. I have no idea who this other dude is. I don't know if he's a wrestler. I don't know if he's a rapper. I don't know what he is, but he looks the part. He looks like he would be, some sort of bodyguard for a rapper or something, or a rapper himself. Who could at least, do a bit of damage and with a cinder block. So I'm looking forward to this. And you know what? More Rick Ross? Sure. Why not?
Yeah, I'm open-minded to these additions mainly, but I will say, like, yes, this individual, the unnamed individual, he's probably just going to be your muscle here. I would say if it's like a wrestling role, you could certainly look at, man, this is a company that it's like, man, you have a just never-ending lineup of talent that are just dying for TV time. I would say more so for Parker Boudreaux, he better really step up to get to justify this role, because you could certainly look at, like, others that you could fit into a role like this. It's not like Parker Boudreaux has knocked everybody dead since he's come into this company. This is, in theory, a pretty, not main event spot, but a significant one. Certainly the most significant for him since his Harlan days.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like there are only so many big guys to fit into a faction, and I mean, are there any others that you could honestly think of that would have, played this role better?
Oh, this could have been Nick Comoroto's coming out party.
I mean, he's already got a gig in the factory, doesn't he, for life at this point?
Could you imagine Miro as a mogul?
Miro as a mogul. Miro with Rick Ross. I think that would be quite,
oh my goodness,
quite the talking.
I would just love Rick Ross to do one episode of Dark on commentary. Let him loose on YouTube.
I think we're getting close.
Okay. I am greatly entertained by Rick Ross, and I'll never not be when they announce him for a segment. For Rampage, it is the $300,000 Three Kings Trios Battle Casino Royale over the top rope extravaganza. Eddie Kingston and Ortiz will speak. Jade Cargill takes on Vert Vixen in a title eliminator match, and Anthony Bowens and Billy Gunn versus Jeff Jarrett and Jay Lethal are set. Dynamite next week has Joe and Wardlow for the TNT title, Bryan Danielson against Ethan Page, and the Falls Count Anywhere, match number 6 of the Best of 7 series in Broomfield, Colorado.
All right.
They'll be at Elevation. See if that affects them. They're in Colorado.
Oh, okay.
They'll be competing at Elevation.
I thought you meant like the show.
No, you're right. It will be a literal AEW Dark Elevation taping. Jamie Hayter versus Hikaru Shida is the main event for the Women's Championship. And they start off where Shida has run into the guardrail during the picture-in-picture. A snap mare off the turnbuckle is delivered to Shida. They fight on the edge, and you've got Baker and Rebel in the corner as well. Shida gets dumped off the buckle when the superplex is blocked, and then Hayter misses a top rope moonsault, allowing Shida to connect with a running knee for a 2 count, and then she goes for the katana, but Hayter collapses on her knees and therefore can't take the move, and out of nowhere catches Shida with a DVD backbreaker and a lariat for a 2 count, and then goes for the Haterade. What do you think about the Haterade, Way?
That's her name for the Rainmaker?
Yes.
The Haterade. Could be worse.
It could be better. The Haterade is stopped, and then we get a series of kicks from Shida. Hayter ducks a katana. There's a German by Shida, and then Baker gets onto the apron with a kendo stick as Rebel distracts the referee. Shida grabs Baker, attacks her off the turnbuckle, and hits her with the kendo stick, and then Hayter comes back. This leads to a deadlift powerbomb by Jamie Hayter, and when Shida kicks out, the place explodes, and they give a standing ovation at this point. We get a series of kickouts. The crowd is on fire. Lariat by Hayter for a 2 count before hitting the Haterade for the win in 16 minutes and 17 seconds. A fantastic reaction from this crowd, and these women worked incredibly hard and stepped up in a big way in a big role to get over 16 minutes here in the final slot.
An incredible match. It's incredibly rare for AEW to showcase a women's match in the main event, and these two took full advantage by delivering a standout, memorable performance from the get-go. You could tell that this was a match that was going to be a lot more hard-hitting than a lot of matches that you were going to see on this program. And I think that's a style that I feel like Jamie Hayter has used in all of her matches, and maybe part of the reason why this audience has gravitated towards her so much. And her now having a title run with matches on TV in this type of style, I think is incredibly welcome. You have Hikaru Shida here, who's also very willing to hit hard and to wrestle a very aggressive, fast-paced style, and you got that here. I don't think anybody, I certainly wasn't expecting, Hikaru Shida to have much of a chance to beat Jamie Hayter, but this match got so good that they got this crowd to suspend their disbelief to think that it could have happened. So, they got this crowd to stand up for them this deep into the program, and I think that's something that should be very, very commended.
Yep, they did a really, really strong performance in the main event slot. And then Baker and Rebel continue the attack on Shida when Toni Storm runs down, and they're explaining she is not cleared yet after breaking her nose. And they beat down Hayter, and they're about to lay her out with a belt shot. And then Saraya runs down at the end to save the baby faces. And we have what looks to be a 6-woman tag coming at a future episode at some point over, whether it's next week or Seattle, probably. Well, I guess it depends. They did explain that Storm is not cleared, whether legit or, in storyline at least, because she certainly got physical here. So anyway, setting up a match coming out of this as well.
Yeah, we haven't seen Saraya wrestle, of course, since Full Gear, and I think seeing her in a trio setting will be, a great way for her to kind of have her moments without needing to get completely physical for an extended amount of time. So, they're establishing some, I think, pretty strong baby faces in on the program to oppose, Hayter and Rebel and Baker. So I think it's in good shape.
And, January 4th will be very interesting how Dynamite handles it because, from all indications, that will be hours removed from Mercedes Varnado appearing at Wrestle Kingdom. And if, do you put out it, if she is in fact coming to LA, I would want to make that, it seems the Tony Khan way is the wink and the nod without flat out stating it, but how at that point it's the secret's out for New Japan and AEW doing some kind of heavy tease that night of what's coming the next week. And conversely, if it's not, I would say making sure you don't have that surprise element if you don't have all your I's dotted and T's crossed.
Same thing, WWE had to contend with a head of Survivor Series in Boston, right? So, I don't know. Do we see some sort of dollar bill left on the ramp or something like that? Something to basically spell out this person is coming without explicitly saying so, or do they just say it?
Maybe they announced Snoop Dogg will be there on January the 11th at the Forum. Tune in. Saraya says Snoop Dogg's going to bring me out to the ring. Yeah, or Rick Ross. Yeah, that could be too. Yeah.
And Bow Wow, and Action Bronson. Just bring all the rappers.
Could you imagine? Imagine that pop. Mercedes walks out and then she's interrupted by Rick Ross. Give it up! Give it up!
Yeah, he should call the entire match. Rick Ross should call Wrestle Kingdom. How about that?
Oh my God, yeah. That's not Mercedes. Sasha Banks. That's Sasha Banks. Oh my goodness. And that was Dynamite. I would say two very strong matches on the show between the women's match and the trios match, but this was more of a show that, it focused on a lot of talking segments, but very effective ones that I like the departure from the usual, the usual format, that you had some really strong promos on this show and building up a lot of different programs that I really enjoyed this 2-hour program.
I thought it was another very strong edition of AEW Dynamite. Good wrestling. I mean, and a very fresh Death Triangle versus Elite match this time. An incredibly strong women's main event that we rarely get to see, and then strong talking segments as well. From everybody. I like Mox's promo. I like Danielson's promo. Who else we got here? Ricky Starks and Chris Jericho.
That Starks segment was tremendous.
Yeah, it was a very good show.
I thought Ricky Starks, he felt like a superstar on this show, like a top babyface. It's been remarkable, this month where he has truly broken through to another level.
Bigger star than Rick Ross? Bigger breakthrough than Rick Ross?
Baby steps. We're not there yet. All right. We're going to take your super chats, your feedback. You can get your questions in, your thoughts, and yes, as we close out this episode.
All right, let's go to some of your super chats. As always, if you guys are watching us live at youtube.com/postwrestling, we go live pretty much 5 minutes right after WWE Raw, right after AEW Dynamite, right after WWE SmackDown and AEW Rampage, but that's in the cafe, so you got to join us for that. Join the cafe for that. But tonight, super chatters. First, we go to Hansi, who sends $7 Canadian. Thank you, as always, for the support, Hansi. He says, you can do a show with promos in this company when the promos sound real and the talent is over in their roles with the right crowd playing along. And I believe this was in response to us, commenting that Rampage started with a talking segment instead of a wrestling segment today. And yeah, I certainly agree. As we touched on, Hansi, I mean, it's the quality of the segment that really kind of dictates, its enjoyment, and maybe that's what WWE has been lacking for a long, long time. I certainly think you can rely on a pattern, too much, and as I say, my pattern of my crutch phrase of too much. But tonight I thought it was a nice break for AEW to start with a promo. Let's go up next to Matthew Yanes, who sends $2. Who says, Rewind-A-Dynamite #1. Merry Christmas, gents.
Merry Christmas to you, Matthew. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Matthew. We got a Edwin B, who sends $5 to say, weekly AEW Dark, AEW Dynamite, AEW Rampage, and ROH, fill in the blank. Happy holidays.
A name.
What will you call the Ring of Honor show?
Ring of Honor.
At this point, seeing that it's the only Ring of Honor TV show, you probably just end up calling it Ring of Honor. Like when Ring of Honor was on Sinclair, it did not have any sort of catchy name. It was strictly Ring of Honor. Once they have a secondary show, then maybe. But I don't think
Ring of Honor Adrenaline.
Has that one been used before? I'm pretty sure it has.
It's there in the drop down menu of wrestling names.
Yeah. Ring of Honor. Fried.
Night one.
That's it. That's the answer right there.
All right. Thank you everybody for the super chats.
Thank you guys.
We have a few pieces of feedback. Let's start with Roman from Chattanooga, Tennessee. One of the most memorable episodes of Dynamite we've seen in a while, from Stark saying Jericho had an air fryer body and dressed like a single dad on his 5th divorce, to Danielson being called Vegetable Man and a raggedy bitch. MC Lil Dutt and the FCC's favorite, you a big motherfucker. 8 out of 10 show. Rick Ross in a Santa suit could have taken this over the top, but alas, we were robbed. A question: do you think that the combination of exploring new markets and updating the look of the shows will bring a shot in the arm to AEW's business in 2023? Not that they're in trouble by any means, but it was apparent the last few months that they were starting to exhaust certain parts of the country. Have a great Christmas, everybody. Yes, this is in relation to the story that Tony Khan has confirmed that in the new year, there will be a new look to the shows. I don't think anyone is buying tickets to see a set or graphics I think it's much more going to be contingent on your stars and angles and matches that are going to attract and the general buzz that you generate. And it's nice aesthetics, but even Tony Khan noted, like, he's hesitant to like build this up as something significant when it's like WCW tried that way back in the day when they were going to have a new set and a new logo, and they made it up to be this idea, like it was going to be this thing that gets us back to prominence. It's like, let's look at the realistic outcome here of a new look. It's nice, but other than some brief oohs and ahs, I don't know if it's going to have much impact beyond that.
A fresh coat of paint is a great accent, on a house that already has strong internal structure. But when a house is, this is all like,
I love this.
This is from my home shopping times. But if the bones of the house, as my real estate agent like to call it, aren't good, then you can, I don't know, have a brand new kitchen and it's probably still going to be shitty. Yeah. So I'm in agreement. What was notable was that we had Ricky Starks call that January 4th show New City, New AEW. So I wonder like how hard they're going to promote the fact that you're going to see like a new set and new things.
Yeah. I mean, I missed that. So I mean, if they've got like a little like branding for that show, like certainly the Seattle show feels like it's going to be a much bigger than usual Dynamite that they're building to.
Let's go to Bryan from New Jersey, who says a strong main event between Hayter and Shida with the hot close, quality chaos between Death Triangle and the Elite, and a lot of fun promos with Starks and Jericho, Danielson versus Ego, and Stokely and the King of Television's holiday message. Less fun, but very serious words from the likes of Moxley and Hobbs. My biggest negative was the very clunky formation of the Mogul affiliates with miscues and Rick Ross having to stretch a lot.
Live television at its finest, I thought. Jordan from the Bronx. Everyone wants to talk about Rick Ross. For better or for worse, he's a meme factory whenever he's on Dynamite. The segment was chaotic and random as hell. Andretti and Starks getting pulled into the Jericho orbit can be fun as long as it doesn't last 8 months like the other feuds. The Elite Death Triangle match was fantastic. Stipulations in the back half definitely helped differentiate and elevate each match. Hayter and Shida earned that main event spot and delivered. Hopefully this sets a tone to switch up having the women stuck in the 9:30 spot. I want to get more into the Darius Martin Moxley match, but the match never left first gear. Darius seems to be missing something that Dante has with the crowd. Happy holidays. And same to you, Jordan.
I don't know if it was a match designed to get beyond a first gear, like it's Mox like being Mox.
Mm-hmm. This was not the Takeshita match on Rampage. This was not the Guevara match that he did on Friday. This was much more of a just Moxley coming in and, he is the higher ranked individual. And, it was Darius trying to hang with this guy and not.
We got a Johnny from Saskatoon who says, fun Dynamite tonight. Oddly enough, it was the inclusion of Rick Ross mediating the face-to-face of Swerve and Lee that made me watch tonight. Unfortunately, the segment was terribly awkward, like the backstage lost communication to the live show. Hayter and Shida was match of the show. Really felt like a New Japan match. You could feel those gears clicking in as the match got closer to the end. Overall, great show. Feels like AEW is hitting its stride again. I feel excited to watch AEW again.
And a lot of that you have to give to like these crowds. These last few weeks have been tremendous, and tonight was another example of it. Like they elevated those matches, and especially the women's match too. Like that was like they treated them like huge stars at the end. Like this crowd was awesome in San Antonio. Muggin writes, it's rare that the women's division closes out at Dynamite, 9 months to be exact, but Hikaru Shida and Jamie Hayter made the most of it. It was a strong outing for both ladies. Ricky Stark's star power didn't dim one iota after Winter is Coming, and entering the Jericho-verse has me a little concerned because of Jericho's habit of dragging out feuds. I hope Ricky, Jericho is not the head booker either. It's like, he certainly has his input, so to speak, but it was like this guy's not showing up and just saying, okay, this is how it's going to be, and this is all that we're going to do. Like there is a head booker here in AEW. I hope Ricky is the exception to the rule and he gets elevated even further. It was nice to see Action Andretti get the rub for his involvement. It appears that Death Triangle might blow a 3-1 lead. The Lee Strickland segment was like watching a snuff film with Rose's commentary. A strongly bookended episode.
And finally, we got a Cody from Maine who says a strong show, but another instance of AEW trying to fit too much onto the card. I appreciate the attention to storylines, but I could have done without the hook matchup to set up the backstage beatdown, Sonjay's rap, and even the Mogul affiliate segment, although Rick Ross was hilarious. The six-man was as wild and entertaining as expected. The main event was fantastic, but even those had the end of match skirmishes that I could have gone without as well. I swear I enjoyed the show. That said, happy holidays to both of you, and thank you all for the hours of entertainment. I really enjoyed the dishwasher conversation on last week's talk. Always nice to know there are others out there. Yes.
All right. Well, thank you, Cody, and thank you to all of you for your feedback. And that brings an end to Rewind-A-Dynamite. We failed to mention it off the top, but Way will be back on Thursday at 3 p.m. Eastern Time, the final wellness policy of the year with Jordan Goodman and Neil Flanagan. It is open phone lines. I hope you have a 7-second delay in case you get any F-bombs from any big bosses out there.
I hope Rick Ross calls in.
Oh, please.
Yeah.
I will call in if Rick Ross calls.
Okay, yes. We're actually going to be streaming this one right here at youtube.com/postwrestling, 3 p.m. Eastern. So details on how to call in will be presented to all of you as you tune in live. Join me, Neil Flanagan, Jordan Goodman. It is open phone lines. So whatever topics you want to talk about that are relevant to the wellness policy, whether it be about community, whether it be about yourselves, whether it be about one of us, share your stories. Call us 3 p.m. Eastern, Thursday.
Always a great show that the three of you guys put out each month. And then Friday night, the Christmas show premieres here on the YouTube channel at 11 p.m. Eastern Time. A packed edition. It's the post-wrestling Christmas tradition here at the site. And then coming up this weekend as well, do want to make mention that Brandon Thurston will be releasing a audio documentary on Vince McMahon and his 2022. What better way to start off Christmas morning than by listening to Vince McMahon's year that saw him ousted from power from World Wrestling Entertainment. So that is how Brandon Thurston will be celebrating Christmas on Wednesday. We hope you all join him, and it should be a tremendous retrospective on one Vince McMahon. So there you have it, and no Rewind to Raw this Monday night. We may have a different show in its place this Monday, but with the best of show, Way and I are not sitting down to watch the absolute best of Raw because we watched every single Raw this year. So this is our one Monday that they are giving us off. But plenty next week, including the release of the 5-year anniversary show, and then pretty much back to normal next week with next week's Dynamite.
Yeah. So, I mean, outside of the Christmas show, we probably won't see you guys until, at least in the live setting, until next week. So we want to wish everybody happy holidays and do tune into the Christmas show on Friday.
Thanks to everybody for all your support throughout the year or years for many of you out there. We hope you have a very safe and happy holiday, and we will speak with you at the Christmas show. Bring your eggnog.